Howdy, howdy. And happy Wednesday. We're here every Wednesday, roughly about 2, 3, 4, whatever o'clock you want it to be. The Inner Journey with me and my Robert Morales, our CEO network, talking to entrepreneurs and business owners and anybody else who wants to talk about these emotion stuff. With me, as always, my wonderfully astute and physically delicious. We're talking about certain things today. Anyway, Miss Mary Van Alstyne. Hold on, let me get you there. There we go.
Oh, there I am.
Yeah. The famous, the infamous.
Yeah.
Hello. So again, like I said, Rob Morales, our CEO network, talking to Mary and entrepreneurs about the emotions and things we deal with in being human in life and the things that we come across. I think in a very unique aspect of being an entrepreneur, trying to understand these emotions and trying to figure out this life thing really reflects into our business life and everything we do, our passions, and even our relationships. So if you want to like what we're doing, and if you like and appreciate everything that we talk about, hit those love emojis here on Facebook, Twitch, and LinkedIn. If you're on YouTube, hit that like button because you want to see us every week, and subscribe.
Yes.
That's what we do. So this week, you don't love me, Mary.
I think you don't love me.
I don't think you love me.
I just can't tell that you love me.
Is it okay to say I love you to somebody and not have any kind of, sexual inclinations to that person?
100%. I say it all the time.
Yeah, because I think some people misinterpret that sometimes, which is why we need a certain kind of language. A love language.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
So today we talked a little bit about addressing some of the things that I feel are very important. Mary brought up the idea of understanding our languages, and not the language that we speak, but really the emotional language that we come across.
And how we both give and receive love as humans, as people. And what brought me to think about this for today kind of was a feeling in a relationship with someone where right now we're a little bit disconnected at the moment physically and by voice, by time difference. Yeah. And I was thinking about it as I was walking, and I thought it was really interesting how, even though I know the connection is there, lacking these certain things, my little bucket, if you want to call it, of feeling full of love feels a little bit empty or a little bit drained. And so it got me really thinking about how we show people love, how we receive love. What does it take to fill our love tank, which kind of brings us to today's topic of the 5 love languages. Yeah,
I think we're just lost people in general, right? Mm-hmm. I think we go through life being nurtured and being taken care of as very young children. I mean, we have to, because there's really no language there. As soon as we're born, the things we communicate are just anger, frustration, crying, because we're not able to verbalize those things. And as we grow older, we continue to do that because I think, and I will say, and it's not a fault to my parents, but they didn't really teach me how to be emotionally mature, And so in that journey and trying to discover and be better for myself, I've come across the love languages too, and really love meaning that I think that connection with somebody. Mm-hmm. I think that the definition of love is sometimes obscure depending on who you talk to, depending where you're at in your own relationship, and really where you're at in life. Because I've told you I loved you before, and it doesn't come across as sexual. It's just like I have this real deep connection with you that is very unique, and it's really undefined. And I really appreciate the time that we share, especially in these moments on the show. And we're able to kind of have those conversations and feel safe, I think, at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Safe from judgment, safe from just any kind of reprieve from somebody else. It's like we have our little bubble here. Yeah. It's our little bubble that everybody gets to watch us from the outside.
Yeah, watch us have conversations that we would have off camera, right? And I also feel like I use that word. I love love. Like, I love the word love. I love the feeling of love, not love as in an infatuation type love, but just having a love and an affection for another person. Ask anyone I know and they will tell you, I say I love you at the end of a conversation when I'm leaving. I'll be leaving my office and I'll be like, love you guys, and it is spoken from the true place in my heart where all I'm doing is expressing, a strong feeling of, not attachment, but what's the word I'm looking for? Affection towards people that are very close in my life. And I think it all too often, probably from back in the day when we were younger, you don't say I love you to someone. It means something totally different. And I think, thank God that the world is starting to open up to the true meaning of love and affection.
I think, well, people who are inspired to be enlightened, I think there is a deeper meaning to that. Because again, I agree with you. It's a deep affection for somebody that it's not sexually driven. It's just like you can have a unique place, like your relationship with your mom or your relationship with your dad. If it's a good one, or your kids, it's a very unique relationship. It's not sexually driven. It's just a deep connection with that is seemingly unbreakable when it comes to like a parent and child. But it becomes a little obscure when it's a friend.
Well,
right?
For some reason we were taught that the love is only for your partner, your parents, your children, your family, right? And then everybody else, it's you like them, you don't love them, and why not?
Yeah.
Why not? I absolutely love so many people in my life. So I mean, I express that to everyone, and I really hope that we as a society and as a culture become more accepting of the word love and expressing that to those around us.
Yeah, because I think sometimes people are, like, again, thrown off by that. Because if I'm in public, if we're hanging out, let's say at a social function, whatever it is, and I say, thanks, Mary, I love you. And you're like, oh, I love you too. It doesn't mean much more than just a strong affection for that person. But other people around you may be like, oh, are they dating?
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes back to how we were raised, what the word love means, right? Love has so many definitions according to so many different people. So, and what we're talking about is true affection, love, caring, versus infatuation, which can be mistaken for love, or
Well, I think people equate that sense of physical love, the sexuality, the intimate touch, as an expressive part of love, and not necessarily the emotional connection with somebody. I mean, there is an emotional connection there, but people are so driven to everything tangible. It has to make sense. Like, I have to, buying things. If I buy something online, do I really own it until I really get it and see it and touch it? You know what I mean? I don't know a better example other than that. But people in overall are very like I said, they're very physical based. Because it's probably because we're on this physical plane. We have to equate things to a physical sense. As you get into emotional, it becomes a little bit obscure, and then as you talk on the spiritual level or in the spiritual plane, it becomes even more obscure, and it kind of there's almost polarizing effect when it comes to like talking to people about spirituality, because people have different, religious points of view and all this stuff. But
one word means a billion different things in that world, right? It just as in any other. And I think what we're coming to understand too is love is really an action. The feeling of love is far different than the act of love, which it kind of goes along with what we're talking about today, the love languages, how we fill our love bucket. So the idea of your love language is you have a love bucket, right? And it's either depleted or it's full. And this goes by how loved you feel and how much you're giving love. And those love languages, we all feel and give and receive love in different ways, and they've kind of narrowed it down into 5 different categories that are pretty common across the board. And so, yeah. Do you know what are you going to say?
I was going to post those up. I got Ramona. She says, yes, interpretations. Our brains need different things related to appealing to the senses.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll post the love languages here because that's today's topic. Yes, how full is your bucket?
My bucket?
Ramona's asking.
Oh, my bucket is pretty full. At the moment, I would, like I was saying on my early morning hike this morning, it felt a little bit low.
Then you come here and then it fills up again.
It's totally full.
And again, it's because we have a different space that I feel is very unique. And sometimes I guess in the past, since I haven't been emotionally mature very long, I've only really discovered a lot of these things in the past few years. I would be very protective of that and be like, oh, this is my friend. Mary's my friend. I don't want to share her, But I also, if you realize in the contemplation with love, is that it is as much as it is enticing, you have to let it free too, because that's the whole thing with what love is.
Yeah.
So your love languages. Let's. Let's get into those.
What are
we
your?
Have 5.
We have 5 love languages. So, what is your love language? What are your top 2? Because what I learned from this study is that we tend to have more than one. However, we have a couple dominant, kind of like personality traits. So, what are yours?
Mine were pretty equal. Mine are physical touch and quality time.
Awesome.
And yours, Miss Mary?
Mine are pretty equal too. Words of affirmation and physical touch are very high up there on the.
So as far as like, because we share physical touch, right? What does that mean to you as far as like relationships and people and the things you come across? And it doesn't necessarily have to be intimate, but just what does that translate to you in your life?
Well, to me, the physical touch part of it, like with my kids, I'm very cuddly with them, affectionate with them. If they walk by, I'm putting my hand on their back. This is how I receive love. Yeah. So of course, this is going to be the main way that I show love. Yep. If it's with a partner, a romantic partner, if we're sitting next to each other, my hand's on their hand, or my hand is on their leg. I noticed that too. Or, I'm doing something with their hair, or I'm somehow always in the touchy, with people, work colleagues, clients, friends. I'm a hugger. I'm the one that just hugs. So the COVID thing was really hard for me. Because I love to hug people, I love to hug people, and with friends, I'll just put my arm on them when I'm talking to them, and so it's definitely one of the ways that I show love and receive love at the highest level.
Yeah, and I will say with Violet too, when we're in the car or doing something, I'm always kind of putting my hand on her hand, and I feel when she does that to me, I feel that sense of like connection there, and it's very subtle. It's very subtle. So if you're a physical touch person, you haven't taken the quiz, I would actually recommend, let me put that up since we got talking about it. Absolutely. If you go to the 5lovelanguages.com, you can actually take the quiz and see what your love languages are and identify that. And really what it comes down to is that communication piece. What we've talked about, previously is understanding kind of your needs first and figure out what you are aspired to. Because if it is physical touch, does it make sense to be with somebody that does or doesn't have that, or can you communicate that to the other person, especially if they're not physical touch? Does that relationship work? Or are you going to be blaming that other person for, like, hey, you know what, I'm very sexual, I'm a physical touch kind of person, and you're not very physical with me, but that's not one of their love languages. Is that a decision for you to end that relationship or not? Or is that something that you need to overcome to understand that, hey, that person doesn't need that? There's so many questions that kind of divulge from understanding that. But I think the first line of understanding, especially for yourself, is what kind of person are you?
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a thought and it went away, just like last week. What's going on with my thoughts? They keep going away. The book really dives into learning that it's no longer about that golden rule of, treat others as you want to be treated. Now we've moved on overall to the platinum rule, right? And we're starting to learn that we want to treat others the way they want to be treated, right? Not necessarily how we want to be treated. So that's the point of learning these different love languages: words of affirmation, physical touch, gift receiving, quality time, acts of service. We all feel love at a different level with each of these levels.
You're communicating different languages, Lena.
Yeah, so it's about learning what you are, and then the book kind of talks about romantic partnership.
Yeah, I think that's the focus.
It's the focus of the book. They also have another book about how to with kids and things like that. So, but it's about learning not only your language, but being able to understand why is it that sometimes I don't feel loved by my partner. And the big common reason that people are separating is because they're saying, well, they just don't love me. Meanwhile, the other person is loving them with all they have, just in another language, and so being able to understand what you are and how you receive love, but also what the other person is and how they receive and give love. It's almost like learning another language. It's almost like I'm learning Spanish because you only speak Spanish, right?
Yeah.
And it takes time and practice, and that's what love is, an action, right? We're choosing to do these things to fill the other person's love bucket and understand our own, and also brings a level of emotional maturity, right? Because if we're only concerned about how we receive love and we're not receiving it, maybe they're practicing or they're tired or whatever, but we can notice that they're loving us in their language. We can then take that, and maybe have a communication about it, but it allows us to become more emotionally mature overall. because we're able to take the other person into account, and we're learning, right?
Absolutely agree. And I will talk about some real world examples that are outside of intimacy. Ramona did ask where she can get the book. And since we're talking about it, since you asked, you can go to Amazon there, and it's got the 5 love languages. You can buy it there. You can buy it in an audiobook. I prefer audiobook myself, but...
or any bookstore. They have a lot of activities and things in there that you could do. So if you end up buying the audiobook, and I do a lot of audiobook, and then if there's a lot in there that I want to kind of rehash or reread or do exercises too, I'll just buy the book. So there's a lot of good used bookstores. We should look up the addresses for those and share, since we share so many books on here.
We do share so many. If you watch us,
we're Amazon promoters, clearly.
we're clearly making Amazon some money. So if Amazon wants to drop us, a couple bucks here and there, that would help the show out a little bit. But what I really want to tie back to is kind of understanding yourself and how that translates into your daily routines and the people you meet too. Because if I'm highly a physical touch person, I'm probably going out there and hugging and handshaking. And if I don't know that's part of myself, that I'm high on physical touch, the other person doesn't shake my hand, do I get offended by it?
Right.
And maybe they're not physical touch, or, you come across people, especially during the last year when we're all like bogged down and wearing masks and stuff. Nobody's touching anybody.
I know.
And so that initial you're like, oh, and like, how about if I just pound the fist, I guess, and you're like, so there was a lot of adjustments for those physical touch type of people, especially in the business environment and relating to other people, and that puts a deficit in there. And can you understand that of yourself? And can you translate to somebody else? Can you blame them for not shaking your hand? So translate that back to the intimate relationship. Can you blame your partner for not touching you as much if they're not that same touch?
I don't think that you can blame them. I think that a mature conversation should be had, and preferably around the book that you've both read together, and...
But Miss Mary, not everybody is emotionally inclined as you and I.
Okay, then one person reads the book and then kind of just has a discussion with the other person. Hey, I learned this really cool thing. And then here's what happens is when we, a lot of the times it only takes one person. If it's not something serious like abuse or complete incompatibility, but it can just take one person. If one person's understanding and then starting to show that other person who's maybe not reading the book or not open to it, love in the way that they want to receive love, what do you think that does? It makes them more open. They feel more loving. They feel they're doing better in their job. They're feeling better in their everyday life. And then you kind of maybe slowly bring it up again and say, how I've been doing these things. I realize this is the way you receive love. And I would love if you'd be open to hearing how I receive love, and it's all about emotional maturity and conversation,
And I will say again, I equate love to a deep affection for. It doesn't mean sexual. I have come across men in my life where I not only my dad, but other men that I've said I love you to. I wouldn't necessarily tell them that. But as far as
why not make it the norm?
Well, because I'm not sure they would receive that in the same way or have the same emotional kind of sense of that. If I go up to one of my friends, that it's not necessarily on that equal emotional level and say, hey, dude, hey, man, I love you.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, what? Why are you going to be like that?
Yeah.
I tell my brother that and it gets awkward. I've known that guy my whole life. But since we're talking about things that we're connected with, because you and I are both physical touch, let's talk about the opposing forces a little bit too.
Yes.
Let me go back there. Let me readjust this. I got all cockeyed. Again, I am a physical touch, but I'm also quality time. And then your second.
Words of affirmation.
So my quality time, I'll describe mine and then you can kind of describe yours. At least my experiences of quality time. I found that just those moments, those shared moments, even if they're quiet and you're sitting next to each other, that you just have a shared moment. And quality time meaning that I'm allowed to kind of be by myself too. I really appreciate the fact that when I play music, it's just there. And then when I'm able to practice enough that I can demonstrate that in front of the person I love or people I'm affectionate with, especially house parties. I love to practice and learn that so I can go and have that quality time with either friends or family that I can play guitar with and they're singing with me. I really love and appreciate that sense of when I'm playing a song or I pull up a song that somebody likes and I'm able to play it for them right then and there and they're singing along with me. Those are those moments where I'm like, oh, wow. When we have our events, the same thing. When I see people enjoying the time that they're here to do or connecting with people, I'm like, wow, this is really quality time. So I'm really, that really feeds into my ego and really satisfies me. Even though I'm not necessarily directly involved in the communication, that quality time is important for me.
Yeah.
You know, and then your experience with
my experience with the words of affirmation. Well, I really tend to thrive on very focused, deep conversations one-on-one with people. That really just lights me up. I also love a little bit of the other stuff, like, you know, someone told me I did a good job. It tends to carry, if someone notices something about me and they express it verbally, it tends to carry me for days. And, you know, all of these could be perceived by the other love languages. You know, if someone's not words of affirmation, oh, that person just likes their head blown up all the time, you know? And that's not necessarily true. It just happens to somehow fill us up, which is probably a personality characteristic that we picked up from childhood somewhere. Who knows where we got these tendencies for specific languages. However, I love when someone is, that's why I love talking to you. I come in here, we're just very focused on each other. We're, you know, I'm the only thing that's happening in your world right now, and you're very focused on what I'm saying and receiving it and sharing back to me. I mean, those kinds of things just really carry me. So I tend to randomly text people in my life things that I appreciate about them, you know, and that's the way I show love. And if someone does that for me, it's like, oh, it just fills my heart completely, you know? So that is my experience of words of affirmation. Words of affirmation is, in physical touch, words are probably just a touch higher than physical touch for me.
Yeah, and so like even today, so I'll give a real example of just happened a few minutes ago. So Mary came in and she bared a gift, and if you look at the love languages on there, there's receiving gifts. That's probably the least on my scale, and when she gave it to me, I'm like, oh, thank you. I have to remind myself. To be genuinely thankful, even though it's uncomfortable for me, because that's not part of who I am. And if you weren't emotionally mature yourself, you'd be like,
I'd be offended by that.
Be offended.
It's a rejection. If I was a gift, receiving gifts is probably one of the lowest on mine as well. Probably one of the lowest on mine as well. I mean, I love the gifts. I love receiving. It's so sweet and it's thoughtful. It's just not something that I kind of require. And it doesn't mean that you're greedy or you're materialistic. It could be a gift of a flower. It could be a gift of, oh, I thought about you and I, you know, grab this flower or this rock or whatever. It's just the act of thinking about someone and wanting to express it in that way. And it was funny because I did notice that and I said, oh, you have trouble receiving, do you?
Yeah. And that's the whole point, you know, what we're trying to articulate today is like, you know, what we're communicating and how we receive that. If you're like thrown off in any kind of way, whether you're doing something for somebody or they're doing it from you, that should be a signal for you about your communication style.
Yeah.
I mean, that should be a further signal to go read a book about why you're feeling that way. Because there's several. You
know? Well, and it ties just like learning personality styles helps you in business. Yeah. This also helps you both in business and personal, just like the personality styles. But it's not just about learning what you are. Yeah. It's about learning how to receive from other people and where they're coming from, right? And I think that has a lot of power in it, right? To be able to become empathetic in that way, where you understand why people are doing what they're doing and what it actually means, not what the story you're making up about it in your head, you know?
Yeah, and I will say that, again, that receiving gifts part is such a tremendous thing for me that's taken a while to overcome. And I know, like, and deep inside, I know I have to, like, pull it out of me and be like, oh my God, thank you very much. And I'm trying to come across genuine, but at the end of the day, it's like, it's a challenge for me.
Yeah.
You know?
It was really clear.
It's like, I didn't.
And thankfully I'm well versed enough in this kind of thing to not take offense to that, you know?
Because like, I think part of it is I'm inclined like, oh shit, I should have got you something. Let me, here's some money. Here you go.
Oh yes, it's my money.
Oh, she blowing the $100.
Uh-oh.
We lost the thing.
I lost the money.
But that's okay.
Okay, I'll find it.
We'll find it later. But you know, it's been a challenge for me to come across genuine, and I try to pull it out of myself, but I'm still kind of awkward at that. And you try to hopefully connect with people that don't blame you for that, you know, or at least recognize it and say, you know, and especially in an intimate relationship. you know?
Yeah. And also, just like everything else we talk about, practice, 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 right? I used to be really bad at receiving and still at times feel uncomfortable. And you know that you're doing it, you know that you're growing when you're feeling discomfort, right?
Yeah.
And so it's about not necessarily avoiding those people that may bring that out in you, but just using every opportunity you have to practice that, you know? And that's really important because there's so many different types of people in the world, and I've got a lot of kids, I've been in a lot of relationships, and I work with a lot of clients, and so I've studied this pretty well. And a lot of the people in my life, they wouldn't know what my love language is because I do all of them, you know. And I intentionally, with my kids, decided when I learned about this, I'm going to do all of the love languages with them so I can learn what they are. And so therefore I became fluent in multiple languages, you could say, you know. And so I'm able to navigate and then once I learn what someone is, really hone in on that. But since I cover all of them, a majority of that, all of them really, especially in my romantic relationship, sometimes they can't tell, you know, without a conversation, which one is my most dominant because I do so many of them. So learn a bunch of languages. It will help you in all areas of your life.
So we couldn't go over all of them today. We're nearing the end of the show, right? We have about 4 or 5 minutes left.
Okay.
So I think the learning lesson from today is to explore this more. And again, it's a communication style. It's not always equal to intimate relationships, but I think people naturally associate the 5 love languages with intimate relationships, which it can absolutely help in. But if you understand these types of things, you can involve them in other aspects of your life with other people, because we don't function as a society without other people. It's just how we grow and how we're communal that way.
Can I bring up one more point that I forgot?
Uh-oh.
We were going to talk about
bring up your point.
the things to avoid. So
Here, go back then.
I kind of wanted to touch on this because this can be the biggest downfall in a relationship. Say you and I are in an intimate relationship, and I'm a words of affirmation person and you're physical touch.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm a words of affirmation person, things that are negative as far as words go will hurt me much more than they would hurt someone of a different love languages.
Right.
Or you being physical touch. If I just all of a sudden stop touching you, that would hurt you much more than me maybe yelling at you for a minute. You know what I mean? And so be very aware when you learn the other person's love language that doing the opposite of that is actually more damaging. So especially with children.
Yeah.
I had a lot of verbal stuff growing up, and I'm a words of affirmation person that caused some damage, right? And it was not intentional, but you know, those things, but then like I'd rather be like hit me or something, like don't yell at me, right? And so it gives you that ability too to navigate avoiding hurting someone that you love, that you care about.
Yeah, and two, like the emotional evolution of yourself is not to use that and manipulate somebody else for that. Because I think we do it. I think we do it subconsciously too. Like we know, like our spouse is really sexually active in our relationship, and sometimes we withhold that physical sense because we subconsciously know that they want that touch.
Punishment mentality.
Yeah. And
that's a whole nother topic.
That's a whole other show.
That's a whole other set of.
We can talk about that next week if you want. But it's really learning these things and evolving in yourself, you know. And again, we can keep going on with a lot of this stuff, but I think at the end of the day, what we want to talk about, what do we want to translate, is constantly learning these things about yourself and knowing what your love language is. You know, so that you can talk to somebody else. And love, again, is defined by deep affection for. It doesn't mean you're sexually active or interested in somebody. It doesn't mean you were pursuing an intimate relationship with somebody. It means just genuine affection. And I think that's hard for people to understand and really absorb, that I can be affectionate with a lot of people, you know, and not necessarily be in a physical way.
Yeah.
But I think that's naturally what people think.
Some people.
Some people. Not everybody. Not us here at the Inner Journey.
No.
Not us here at the Inner Journey.
No. Oh, are you going to show the books?
Yes, I will do the book one more time. But as we come to the end of the show, Miss, so the things that we want to highlight again is just understanding this book. So 5 Love Languages, Gary Chapman. You can go,
Oh, I'm sorry. You did already show the book.
I did show the book already. But you can go to Amazon. Again, we don't get paid by Amazon or Audible or any of these folks. What we've done is understand that this information is out there for you to learn and absorb and integrate into your life. And hopefully it makes your life a little bit better at the end of the day.
Yeah, let's all elevate our lives together as we become more emotionally mature people.
Yes. It's taken me quite a number of years to be at this level, and I'm still feel like I'm learning. But, you know, again, I think at the end of the day, our focus is to improve relationships, not always intimate, just friendships even.
All relationships.
All relationships, you know, and then how people receive love, because again, you express that, how people interpret that, how not only can they give it, but can they receive it too.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then also communication, you know, how can we communicate? Yeah. And sometimes it's not always with words.
Right. Yeah. Not always with words, although mine tend to be a lot with words.
And then learning again about your needs and what your needs are specifically are, because you can't get away from that. And the more you're able to articulate that with your partner and your spouse, it'll start to improve that relationship. If they want to be, sometimes people, and I've learned this in past relationships, sometimes people don't want to be where you're at. And so that becomes a deciding factor in your life. Do I want to continue down this road, knowing that this person is going to be somewhat challenging or maybe even obstructive in my learning? But if I'm willing to take on that task, it shouldn't deter me from my life goals and what I want to do too. Yeah. I mean, it really becomes a choice at that point.
Yeah. And also learning things like this help you to care for yourself without that need for someone to do it for you, you know, because a lot of the times if I'm feeling low, I'll go talk to a friend. You know what I mean? If I'm feeling low in one area, like I was talking about earlier, I come and talk to a friend. Hello. And, you know, or do something to fill up my own bucket and take responsibility for how I'm feeling. Right. So.
Yeah, and sometimes we need those emotional partners that remind us of that. Yeah. And an emotional partner doesn't mean, again, sexual partner, just somebody in your life that you trust, that you're able to communicate these things to. Because sometimes communication isn't always with your partner. You know, sometimes you need to kind of take that separation and that break and understanding a little bit better. And that could even be a book too. Mm-hmm. The 5 Love Languages.
Yes. Read it, learn it, study it, practice it.
So anything else, Miss Mary, today, as we come to the end of the show?
Nope, I just said it all, right?
We've said it all.
Go do it, go learn it, and commit yourself to growth, and let's see where we can all go together.
So that's going to be the end of the show today. So I appreciate you all. Thank you, Ramona, for all the comments, for joining us and being part of the show today. If you guys have any more comments or questions, go ahead and drop those in. We'll get to them next week, and we'll see you next Wednesday on The Inner Journey. See y'all.